Hey everybody, and welcome to The Narrow Life. And today I'm really excited to share with you about joy and anxiety and worry, kind of how they all go together, how to find joy when you're anxious and worried. And as always, I'm sharing from the notes that I take in my time with the Lord. So it's like a journal, but it's also like a conversation with the Lord. It's like a working it out. And so anything I bring to you is actually just going to be me sharing what I'm wrestling with the Lord as He teaches me how to walk a narrow life, how to walk close with Him. And so this one is really a story, and let me give you a really quick backdrop. So I have one son, and he just went to college. Now, my son has Asperger's, and so, and I've always homeschooled him except for 3 years in high school. And anyway, we're really close. He doesn't drive, so I've always driven him back and forth to work, and he's a very sweet and innocent soul, and so I've always been extra protective of him. And I can, if you're a mother or you're a parent, a dad, you can worry about your kids, which I'm going to also share a story from my childhood in here that kind of shares that as well. And so I hope you guys can relate to this. But just a little bit more on the backdrop, he got his first job when he was in a junior or senior in high school, And his first job was working at the top of Pikes Peak, because we lived in Colorado Springs at the time. So my son got to work in the highest job in the world, except for an astronaut. So he worked at over 14,000 feet every day, and the drive up, they had to take a van with the employees up this line. If you've ever driven Pikes Peak, it's a very windy switchback road, and it's very steep. And so he would go up early in the morning, and you couldn't reach him on cell phone, rarely, because it would go in and out. And then at night, I never knew when he was coming back. I would have to meet him at a pickup and drop-off point, because it was an hour drive up the mountain and an hour drive down the mountain. And so a lot of times they would come back, and because of where the Summit House was, there weren't shifts. There weren't different shifts, because that was just logistically impossible. So the staff at Pikes Peak would work like 15-hour days. And so, because once you went up early in the morning, you weren't coming back down until the Summit House was closed. Well, as a mama of a very innocent child who doesn't understand social cues, who can panic if something were to happen, he probably wouldn't know what to do. Every night I was just my stomach was in a knot, because it'd be dark outside, and they're an hour, I'm at the drop-off or pickup point, and they're not there. It's an hour late, it's 2 hours late, there's a storm, and I can't get a hold of him. And the worst would go through my mind, oh my gosh, the van rolled off the side of the mountain, because that's a narrow road, and they're alone when they come back down. Well, they're alone when they go up, and when they come back down, there's nobody else on that mountain. And it's kids driving that van, and they're just like, my son would be like, yeah, we were seeing how quick we could get down. And I'm like, just take your time, But all that to say is there were many, many nights where I was in such a panic, because they would be so late for different reasons. And my mind is like, oh my gosh, your son, Corbin, he's dead, or he's trapped, and he can't get a hold of you. And anyway, so all that to say is when my son went off to college, I was very excited for him, and it was time, it was ready. And I would send him texts every once in a while, but when I wouldn't hear back from him, all of those thoughts would come into my head. Oh my gosh, he's gotten lost because he's at a tiny college and it's out in the woods, and oh my gosh, he's wandered off, or somebody's abducted him, and that is all Satan. That's just all the enemy. But sometimes when those thoughts get in you, it's like a claw, and it's not gonna let go. Those thoughts are not gonna let go, and it can be really destructive for us. And so the Lord was trying to teach me how that verse, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And then also reminded me of my life verse of Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. And so the Lord was really trying to teach me how to not worry and be anxious, because the word also says, do not be anxious. And I'm like, yeah, right. How do you do that? When I have a son who can't always stand up for himself, and now I'm not there to help him and whatever. So there was an incident that happened, and the Lord was teaching me how to find joy when I was in the midst of a panic. So let me just read a little bit of what my conversation or my thought process of how I went through with this. So I just said, joy. I feel like I've found a new friend. Joy comes with confidence, not a self-sufficient confidence, but one I can't conjure up even on my best day. And so I just was also talking about, even in our nation, the shakeup that's happening, the uncertainty. I mean, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. And if you're on the narrow life, let me just tell you, it should be, you need to be on the side of life and righteousness. But either way, no matter what you think or believe, the world is a hot mess right now. Everything's being shaken up. Even the ground is shaking. There are just incredible earthquakes. I've been following this earthquake guy for like 2 or 3 years. And he's like, I've never seen so many earthquakes. Yesterday was the biggest earthquake we'd had in years. And he said there was 2 of them. It was the one in New Zealand. So if you're watching this later, you'll know what date it is. New Zealand had 2 very large earthquakes yesterday. And he said those 2, and he said actually there were 3 very large earthquakes that happened within 6 hours of each other. And he said that is unheard of. But he's been saying this for months, just earthquake after earthquake. And he's like, anyway, there's a shakeup right now in the world. And so in the face of this shakeup, I just said, I feel joy. I'm not worried. I'm excited for what God is about to do, but I also have to be constantly keep laying down my expectations for what's next. And then I said, expectations. That's really a big part of joy. And isn't that true? When our expectations aren't met, that's when we're challenged in our joy. That's when we're challenged in not worrying and not being anxious. When I allow my expectations to take priority in my thoughts, my joy is robbed. And so this is, even though I'm writing this down, this is God speaking to me. This is how he speaks to me. So when I'm writing and I'm processing, and I write in the first person, and so it's not me being very clever and wise and all of this. This is the Holy Spirit talking to me. So he's telling me, Laura, when your expectations start taking priority, your joy is being robbed. So, and then I said, everyone has expectations for everything. And this means at every moment we must lay them before the throne and pick up our expectation in God alone. Yesterday, I was unable to reach my son all day. It's his first week at college. The later the day became, the more I felt anxiety and worry creep in. So this was his first week. He was still learning where the buildings were. And I'm going to tell you one more story. Actually, okay, anyway. So you understand why I was worried so much. When my son was 6 years old, and I hadn't yet learned that he had Asperger's, but I knew there was something different about him because he would panic if he couldn't see me. If I just stepped into the other room, he'd be like, "Mommy, mommy, 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 mommy," and it was that for 6 or 7 years. And as a mom, and at the time I was a single mom, that can be exhausting. I could not, he had to be right there with me at all times. Otherwise he'd be like, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, mommy." I mean, terror would fill him. And so my son and I were living by ourselves in a little townhouse, and we were outside playing. It was a beautiful day, and my car was parked in the front of the townhouse, but I had a garage that was in the back of the townhouse. But the way the townhouse row was set up, I was gonna have to just drive around to the end of the street, turn, and then turn again into the driveway, up and then into my garage. So kind of like a U. And so my son was just playing with his dinosaurs on our little steps. And I said, "Corbin, play with your dinosaurs. Mommy's gonna be right back. See that car?" "Yeah." I said, "I gotta go put our car in the garage. But you stay right here. Mommy's gonna be back in 30 seconds. And so I hopped in the car. I wanted to be as quick as I could because I knew that he could panic. And so I didn't bother to look behind me. I just jumped in the car, drove as fast as I could around the townhouse row, up into the garage, ran through the house, and it literally was probably about 30 seconds. And I ran out the front door, and my son was gone. And I panicked. I ran through the house screaming for my son. And at the time, and he's very small for his age. And so at the time when he was about 6, he looked like a 3-year-old, and he acted like a 3-year-old. And that's why I'm like, something's not right. I didn't know what it was. And actually this incident I'm telling you is actually what prompted us to go see doctors and get him tested. And he wasn't in the house, and I ran outside screaming, and I couldn't find him anywhere. And I ran down to the end of the street, and I turned my head down to the corner, and I turned my head down the next street, and there was Corbin running full steam towards a major road with traffic. And my son at that time had no concept of cars, and he was so little, and he was running so fast, and he was too far away for me to stop him. He was almost, a half a block away from me. And he was just going to run straight into traffic. They weren't going to see him. There was no way he was not going to get hit. And I let out this blood-curdling scream, and I don't know why they were there, but there was a teenage girl standing on the corner. She heard me scream. Corbin was right there, and she just grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back he was about to step into that major thoroughway. And she just grabbed him, pulled him back, and he turned around and saw me, and he came running towards me. And he was crying so hard, there was blood running down his nose. And it was a really traumatic moment for both of us. And so ever since that, I have been even more, so now you understand why I'm like, I can't get a hold of my son. Is he okay? But now he's 20. He's not 6 anymore. But all of that flashes back. And so I was in that same panic, even though he's in college. All I could remember was that same panic I had when he was 6. And this was late at night. We're talking, I think this was close to about 11 at night, and I had not been able to get in touch with him at all during the day. And so the later the day became, the more I felt anxiety and worry creep in. And in the past, I would have full on given in and entertained those thoughts and evil forebodings. And the Bible talks about evil forebodings. So, you could do a search, evil forebodings, and look up that verse and meditate on that and ask the Lord, Lord, what do I have in my heart that's an evil foreboding? And so, yes, I was fighting all day. Oh my gosh, he's abducted, he's lost, he's locked out, he's crying somewhere, he's in a panic. So my son, when he gets in a panic, which he does every once in a while, he freezes and he's like, and those of you who have kids with autism or Asperger's, you know what that is. I mean, it's like they're inconsolable. So I have all these horrible things going through my head. But this time, I stopped myself and knelt down at the bed in my prayer room. And it took a while to refocus and not dwell on all the what ifs. And I recalled, and in that time, then the Lord brought to mind a moment when I was a teenager and I was babysitting for a neighbor. And the people that I was babysitting for, they just lived around the corner from us. I mean, it was just, it was in a neighborhood, so it wasn't a major road or anything like that. It was just a few, really just probably 6, 7 houses. Just, we lived on a curve, down the curve. And so I was really close to my house, but they didn't, they arrived late. They were late. And that was the days before cell phones. And my dad kept calling the house, where are you? Where are you? And I'm like, they're not home yet, chill out. Because that's what we would say back there. Just chill out. They're not home. Get over it, and, but my dad, finally, after one of his calls, there was a pounding on the front door, and it's dark outside, and I was scared. But it was my dad, and he was yelling, open this door. And I'm like, okay. So it was deadbolted, and I was trying to unlock it, and I couldn't get it unlocked. And he was pounding on the door. He had the handle, and he was like shaking the handle, and he's trying to get in the house. And I'm like, okay, hold on. And finally, just as he was pushing really hard and pounding, that deadbolt unlocked, and that door came flying and popped me in the head. And dang, it hurt. And I was not happy. Because I'm like, what is he doing here? And why is he freaking out? But, I kind of get it as a parent. But at the same time, there was a lot of issues where he just never trusted me. Even though I was that perfect kid. I never did anything. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't go to parties. I didn't have friends because I didn't do any of that. So I don't know what he thought I was doing. Because, he came in and by his a tone, and I could hear the suspicion in his voice, I'm sure. And he looked around the house, and I'm like, what is he looking for, a boy? Let me know, because I certainly can't find him. I never had a boyfriend. I was 24 before I had a boyfriend. And then I was 27 because then I married him. So I'm like, I can't find boys. So good luck finding one in here. But finally, my dad left, satisfied that there was nothing weird going on and I wasn't being bad. He left. And as I thought of that, I was like, I don't want to be that kind of parent where I'm suspicious or I'm afraid. And then it causes tension and distrust, or it causes, I don't want my son to be like, okay, mom, leave me alone or whatever. And so as the Lord brought that to mind, I was like, Lord, I forgive my dad. I totally get it. I understand. I forgive him. If I hadn't forgiven him, I forgive him. And then I was like, Lord, show me how to not operate in fear and worry and anxiety and to have joy in this situation. So God just started having me declare all the good things he has for my son. So I just standed up and I was like praising the Lord. And I was like, my son is a warrior. My son is dedicated to the Lord. His life is going to be serving you. And I just started declaring all of these good things and praising the Lord. And all of a sudden that worry and that anxiety just went. And just this peace fell over me. And then that's when I just had this joy, and I was just so happy. And I was like, God loves my son more than I do. And yes, bad things are going to happen to our kids. There is nothing I can do about it other than just praying for him. But I'm going to not pray out of worry and anxiety. I'm going to pray out of joy. And so then that verse, Matthew 6:33, came back to mind. Seek first the kingdom, and then everything else will be added to you. So I'm like, Lord, I want my son protected. I want him to be safe. But your word says that I need to seek you first. So I'm seeking you first. And then the word says to pray in everything, give thanks. So I'm going to give thanks. And the word says to not worry. And I don't know how to not worry, but I know how to seek you first. So instead of focusing on learning how to not worry, I'm just going to seek you first. And so I was just praising the Lord, thanking him for all the things that he has for my son. And I have never worried since then about not hearing from my son. So if I text him and he texts back, that's fine. If he doesn't, that's fine, because God's got him. And I still pray for him every day and every night, but I have not had one moment of worry or anxiety over my son. Am I concerned? Sure. But I don't worry, and I'm not anxious about it. I just lay it before the Lord and I thank him, because that's what he tells us to do. Doesn't mean I don't care. Doesn't mean I don't love him. The word says, seek me first and I'll take care of the rest. So I'm just like, can't do anything about anything. So I'll seek you, I'll praise you, and I will, and then that's when the joy of the Lord falls, and that's where you get your strength. And took me years, and that's a whole nother one. I can tell you some stories on that one too. But so that's today's testimony, is finding joy and overcoming anxiety and worry. And so the verses that I encourage you to read are Matthew 6:33. And then also look up the verses on do not worry, do not be anxious. I don't have that written down. Look up the verses on what it says about evil forebodings. And look up the verses about the joy of the Lord is my strength. And just focus on giving God, just focus on seeking him first. That's why it's my life first, because if there's any issue that I'm struggling with, no matter what it is, anger, fear, relationships, finances, my son, no matter what, I always come back to Matthew 6:33, seek him first. And then everything else is going to be added. So I know that if I'm worrying and I'm anxious, that I'm not seeking him first. All right. Blessings on your day, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.